Something has shifted in the unseen. Can you feel it? A veil trembled, a doorway stirred, and for a moment the boundary between heaven and your reality grew thin. This is not imagination. This is divine interruption. God's timing touching your timeline. Heaven stepping into your atmosphere with a message meant only for the ones who were marked since birth. God's chosen ones, this is your moment of recognition. You did not stumble into this revelation. Your spirit was summoned. Your name was whispered into the light. Only those who carry the oil of endurance can feel what is happening right now. The trembling of old cycles closing, the rumbling sound of gates unlocking in the spirit. You have walked through seasons of waiting, warfare, heartbreak, long nights, and silent battles no one saw. Shadows pressed against you, delays tested you. Exhaustion tried to drain you. But still you did not break. You were being refined, not rejected. And now the wilderness is giving way to promise. I speak this prophetically. The cycle that held you is ending. The doors that resisted you are opening. The assignment over your life is awakening. Heaven has confirmed your identity, and you are stepping into a divine reversal reserved for those chosen to reveal God's miracles on the earth. If your spirit is catching this, comment 777 as a prophetic act of faith. Subscribe, share, and stay until the end, because the revelation coming next will shift you deeper. This is your awakening. God's chosen ones, your awakening has begun. Heaven just confirmed your identity. You chosen one, there comes a quiet but undeniable moment in your journey when something in the invisible world leans in closer, and heaven presses a truth against your spirit so strongly that you can no longer ignore it. A moment when you begin to see that your life has never been random, that the battles you thought were meaningless were actually stitching together the pattern of your calling, and that every delay, every heartbreak, every spiritual attack, every season of loneliness was not punishment but preparation for who you are finally becoming. And if you're honest, you can feel that moment even now, like a subtle trembling in your soul, as if a door you cannot see is starting to open. This is the moment heaven confirms your power, not with fireworks, but with a shift in awareness. When you wake up one day and notice your intuition is sharper, your awareness is higher, and people, places, and habits that once felt familiar now feel strangely out of place, almost too small for you, and you realize something within you has outgrown the version of yourself you used to perform. It is like when Joseph in Genesis went from the pit to the palace. And only then could he finally see that every betrayal, every false accusation, every forgotten promise was part of a divine setup, not a divine abandonment. Genesis 50 verse 20. You begin to reinterpret your story through the eyes of destiny instead of defeat, and this reinterpretation becomes a holy disruption inside you. You start to sense that even when you felt lost, your steps were being quietly ordered, and that realization carries both comfort and confrontation. Because it means you are not just surviving life, you are being shaped for something that requires the full weight of your soul. And deep down, you know that this is why you could never fully fit into the patterns everyone else seemed comfortable living in. As you step deeper into this awareness, the second movement begins. The weight of divine responsibility settles on your shoulders. Not as a crushing burden, but as a sacred pressure that reminds you that you were never meant to drift. You were meant to carry, and you feel it in the way you can no longer make careless choices without your spirit reacting. The way you can no longer slance your conscience without feeling grief inside your own chest. And it is here that you understand why the prophet Jeremiah once heard God say, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Jeremiah 1:5. A declaration that calling is older than your mistakes, older than your trauma, older than your confusion. You chosen one begin to feel that you are held to a different standard, not by religious pressure, but by the dignity of the assignment written into your spirit. and sometimes you might wrestle with it, wondering why others can live recklessly and still seem fine, while you cannot ignore even small compromises without feeling something inside you dim. And that inner conflict is not a curse, it is evidence that heaven has placed a high level of power and authority within you. As you walk with this responsibility, you begin to notice how people are drawn to you in ways you did not request. Strangers open up, friends confide in you, and your presence quietly becomes a place where others feel safe enough to unravel, and you realize that your life has become a kind of walking altar, a living testimony in progress. In this awareness, a controversial truth starts to rise in you like a bold sentence in your spirit. What if you are not just carrying your own story, but also carrying the healing of people who have not even met you yet? And that question lingers like a doorway you are both afraid and excited to walk through. Then another shift arrives and you begin to notice that your hidden season is ending, that you are no longer invisible, even if you still feel small because people are starting to respond to you with a different kind of attention. Some treat you with unexpected honor, sensing something set apart about you, while others become strangely uncomfortable around you, their insecurity or hidden motives exposed just by your presence. And you realize your life has entered the third movement, spiritual visibility, the end of concealment. For a long time you were like a seed underground, unseen but not inactive, covered but not forgotten. And just as a sculptor like Michelangelo once described seeing an angel in the marble and carving until he set it free, you are now in the season where God is revealing the angel in the marble of your own soul, and this revealing comes with both celebration and resistance. Attention increases, both holy and unholy, and suddenly you feel like light and darkness see you more clearly than ever before, and this can be disorienting, because you realize you are no longer just a spectator in the spiritual realm. You have become a recognized presence. People may say things like, "There's something different about you," or when you walk into the room, it feels like the atmosphere changes, and deep down you know it is not ego. It is evidence that your spirit has expanded into the authority heaven has been cultivating in you. At this stage, your intuition and prophetic sensitivity begin to surge, marking the fourth movement of your journey. And it can feel both exhilarating and overwhelming. Dreams become more vivid, inner nudges become louder. Coincidences start to look less like coincidence and more like coded messages, and you find yourself knowing things you have never been told, sensing danger before it appears, feeling the emotional climate of a room before anyone speaks, and it is here that spiritual discernment becomes one of your sharpest tools. This is not paranoia, this is maturity. Even secular minds brush against it when they talk about gut feelings or energy. But heaven is giving you more than vague impressions. It is giving you language, clarity, and timing. It is like when philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way," a truth now echoed by your own spirit as you realize that the obstacles you've faced have not just blocked your path. They have trained your perception, turning you into someone who can sense traps before you fall into them. Modern science, too, unknowingly bears witness to this inner rewiring, because neuroscience has shown that focused attention and repeated experience reshape the pathways of the brain, neuroplasticity, proving that your mind is not static but moldable, a living testimony that what you repeatedly survive and reflect on literally changes the structure of how you see, feel, and respond to the world. And as your spiritual and mental wiring shifts, your sensitivity no longer feels like a curse but a compass. In the middle of this sensitivity, you might begin to feel strange surges of boldness, moments when your voice comes out stronger than you expected, moments when truth flows through you in conversations and people go quiet. Not because you're harsh, but because something in what you said cut through their fog, and you realize that prophetic awareness is not just about predicting the future, it is about revealing truth in the present. Woven through all of this, the fifth movement of your journey becomes unmistakable supernatural protection and divine favor. When you look back over your life, you start to see near misses and narrow escapes, doors that slammed shut that now look like mercy relationships that ended right before they could swallow you. Accidents that should have taken you, but didn't. And it becomes harder and harder to call it all luck. You begin to see it more like the way Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. Yet the mouths of the lions were shut, not because the lions were gentle, but because God was present, Daniel 6. And you realize there were lions in your own life whose jaws never fully closed around you because an unseen hand intervened. You remember times when you were pulled away from environments that once felt exciting but later revealed themselves to be spiritually thick, and as you connect the dots, something in you softens with gratitude and strengthens with conviction. Your resilience no longer looks random, it looks like evidence that heaven refused to let you be destroyed. Your story starts to look similar to others who carried heavy callings, like a modern activist who grew up in a war-torn country and later became a voice for peace at the United Nations, turning the ashes of their childhood into policies that protect children they will never meet, and you realize that your own survival is not just about you. Favor begins to follow you in subtle but undeniable ways, right people at the right time, opportunities you did not manipulate, provision that arrives when logic says it shouldn't, and you start to understand that destiny is not only about effort, it is also about alignment. In parallel with this, you notice that people with hidden agendas seem unable to stay close to you for long, almost as if a spiritual force field is repelling what is not aligned, and this too is protection even when it feels like loss. As you keep walking, the sixth movement becomes more and more visible. Your presence begins to shift atmospheres. You walk into a room filled with tension and notice voices quiet down. Arguments lose their edge and people unconsciously adjust themselves as if a mirror has suddenly been placed in front of their souls. Some feel peace around you. Others feel conviction, and a few feel exposed and may even react with hostility, not because you attacked them, but because your light made their shadows more obvious. Your life becomes living proof of a quieter spiritual physics. What you carry internally changes the external environment. Artists sometimes describe this in their own way, like when painter Vincent van Gogh poured his inner storms into the swirling sky of starry night, turning chaos into beauty and reminding the world that what happens inside a soul can color entire landscapes, and just as his unseen suffering spilled into visible art, your unseen prayers, tears, and wrestlings start to spill into visible impact. You begin to notice that even when you say little, people feel something around you, calm, clarity, or discomfort depending on their own alignment. Children may feel safe near you. Animals may gravitate toward you, and those who are spiritually sensitive may say things like, "I feel lighter around you," or "I don't know why, but I can breathe when you're here." At the same time, you feel your own inner landscape shifting as you walk through different spaces. Sometimes your spirit feels at home, sometimes it feels suffocated, and this internal reaction becomes one more form of divine guidance, showing you where your presence is meant to plant roots and where it is only meant to pass through. At some point, your journey reaches a threshold that feels like both an ending and a beginning, and you realize you are standing in the seventh movement, the call to fully step into your awakened identity and assignment. The questions here cut deep like spiritual surgery. Are you willing to accept that you are not ordinary even if your past still tries to argue otherwise? Are you ready to stop apologizing for the weight of who you are and instead steward it with humility and courage? And perhaps the most piercing question of all, will you choose to live as if your life is proof that miracles still happen even on ordinary days? To people with ordinary scars, to help your heart hold this. Consider a real story of a musician who once struggled with addiction, lost everything, and later wrote songs that stopped strangers from ending their own lives, their private deliverance becoming a public lifeline. And imagine a fictional traveler in a vast desert who follows a pillar of light only they can see, criticized and mocked for walking away from the crowd. Yet that very light leads them to a hidden well that ends up quenching the thirst of nations that once called them crazy. And let these images speak to something in you that logic alone cannot touch. Because there is also a quiet inner law at work. A law that many spiritual teachers and psychologists alike hint at when they say things like, what you refuse to face will repeat itself until you finally meet it with love and truth. A lesson that is not only therapeutic but deeply spiritual. Patterns persist until they are healed. You, chosen one, are now in the season where heaven is inviting you not just to understand these truths but to embody them. Your realization has led to responsibility, your responsibility to visibility, your visibility to sensitivity, your sensitivity to protection, your protection to presence, and your presence to purpose. This is the linear unfolding of your divine storyline. And now, as this word rests on your spirit, here is a bold hook for your heart to wrestle with. What if the very battles that made you question your worth were actually heaven's way of engraving chosen on your soul so deeply that no human rejection could ever erase it? If something within you is resonating, if your own memories are lighting up in response to these words, then this is not just content for you, it is confirmation. You are not here by accident, you are not listening by chance. You, chosen one, are standing at the edge of a new chapter. And heaven is gently but firmly handing you the pen. So as you breathe this in, I invite you to do something simple but sacred. Share, speak, bear witness. In the comments, you can write about a moment when you felt guided, protected, awakened, or strangely set apart. Or you can share the part of this message that pierced you the most. Not to impress anyone, but to agree with what heaven is already doing in you. Because when you share your piece of the story, you help another chosen one recognize their own. And as you do, may a deep peace settle over you, the kind of peace that does not erase your battles, but sits with them and says, even here I am chosen, even here I am being led. You, chosen one, there is a side of this calling that almost no one wants to talk about. A shadow that grows quietly behind the light of I am chosen. And if you are honest, you have felt it tug at you before. It is subtle at first, like a whisper that says, you are different, better, above, and if left unchecked, it begins to twist something pure into something dangerous. This is the shadow side of knowing or thinking that you are chosen, and heaven needs you to see it clearly, not to shame you, but to protect you from becoming the very thing you were sent to heal. Because the moment you begin to embrace the identity of a chosen one, a battle starts inside of you between humility and pride, between service and superiority, between carrying the mantle and wearing it like a crown made for your ego. At first, the revelation that your life has meaning, that God can use you, is deeply healing. It lifts you out of worthlessness, it rescues you from self-hatred, it gives you language for why you never fit in. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, another thought can creep in. If I am chosen, then maybe others are less. If I am set apart, maybe that means I am above. You might not say it out loud, but it can live quietly in your reactions, in the way you dismiss people who don't get it, in the way you secretly judge those whose journey looks slower, messier, or more human than the image you have of yourself. This is where the shadow begins. Chosen one, you were never called to forget that you are human. Sometimes the idea of being chosen can become a shield you hide behind, a way to avoid looking at your own wounds and flaws. It's not me. It's just because I'm chosen, you might say. When relationships break, when people pull away, when conflict follows you. But sometimes the truth is more complicated. Some people leave because the light in you convicts them, yes. But some leave because your unhealed parts, your defensiveness, your lack of listening, Your spiritual pride make it hard for them to breathe. It is easier to call every rejection persecution than to ask the painful question. Is there something in me that still needs to be healed, softened, humbled? The shadow side of being chosen is that your identity can become a shield against accountability. You may start to treat your feelings like prophecy, your opinions like law, your preferences like divine mandate. Instead of saying, I feel you, say God told me, even when what you call instruction is just your own fear or desire wanting permission to move. If anyone disagrees, they are blind, asleep, or not spiritual enough. And just like that, you cut yourself off from the very correction that could save you. You chosen one were never called to be untouchable. You were called to be teachable. There is also the temptation to build your entire identity on your suffering, to wear your pain like a badge that proves you are more chosen than others. You may find yourself thinking, no one understands what I've been through, no one has fought like I have, no one has paid the price I paid. Some of that may be true, your battles are unique, your journey is personal. But if you are not careful, this can become a form of superiority wrapped in victimhood, a way of saying I am more special because I am more wounded. The danger is that you start to cling to the storm because it validates your sense of importance. You begin to unconsciously sabotage peace because chaos is the only environment that makes you feel like a warrior. You don't know who you are without a battle, so you create one. Heaven did not call you to stay in perpetual warfare just to feel chosen. You are also chosen for rest, for joy, for laughter. That does not need pain as a backdrop to feel real. Another shadow appears in the form of the so-called Messiah complex, the belief that you are responsible for saving everyone around you. At first, it looks like compassion. You care deeply, you intercede, you show up. But slowly, something flips. You begin to believe that if you do not answer every call, fix every crisis, carry every burden, everything will fall apart. You may feel guilty when you rest, afraid when you say no, and you might even resent God for giving you such heavy responsibility when in reality you're carrying weight He never asked you to carry. The truth is, you are not the Savior. You are a vessel. You are not the healer. You are a carrier of healing. You are not the light itself. You are a lamp. When you forget this, your soul slides into exhaustion, burnout, bitterness. You might find yourself snapped, angry that people keep coming to you, secretly furious that no one seems to pour back into you. Yet the same pride that keeps you from asking for help also keeps you trapped in the role of the strong one, the spiritual one, the chosen one who never breaks. But you do break, don't you? Alone in secret, when the masks fall off and you realize that in trying to be everything for everyone, you have drifted away from just being a child loved and held. The shadow side of being chosen can also manifest as separation walls built in the name of being set apart. There is a holy separation, leaving environments that are abusive, letting go of relationships that drag you back into darkness, walking away from compromise. But there is also a counterfeit version where you begin to look down on ordinary people, distance yourself from community because they don't understand. My level, and slowly spiritual elitism takes root. You might roll your eyes in your heart when you see someone struggling with what you think you've already conquered. You may become impatient with new believers, dismissive of those who live quietly without visible signs and wonders. You forget that what looks like simplicity from the outside may be deep obedience on the inside. You forget that some of the most powerful chosen ones are hidden on purpose, unknown to platforms, famous in heaven, invisible on earth. When you start to measure chosenness by visibility, you are already in the shadow. Sometimes the shadow shows up in how you handle revelation. As a chosen one, you may see things others don't see, patterns in the spiritual realm. Prophetic insights, discernment about what is coming. That is a gift. But the shadow side is when revelation becomes a weapon instead of a tool for healing. You might start calling out people harshly in the name of truth, exposing, confronting, publicly correcting. Not because God led you to, but because it makes you feel powerful to be right. You may begin to enjoy the shock in people's face, the hush in the room when you speak. You forget that the goal of revelation is restoration, not humiliation. There is a difference between being a watchman and being a judge, between warning and wounding. If your words leave people more crushed than convicted, more ashamed than awakened, you must ask, am I speaking from love, or am I hiding my own unhealed anger behind the mask of prophetic boldness? The shadow side can also turn you inward in a dangerous way. The more you focus on your calling, your battles, your rank, your gifts, your anointing, the easier it becomes to subtly shift from God-centered to self-centered spirituality. You may find yourself constantly scanning your life for signs, confirmations, numbers, meanings, until your walk with God feels less like a relationship and more like a puzzle you must decode. You might forget that He is not just a commander sending a soldier into war. He is also a father who wants to sit with you in silence, a friend who wants to walk with you in the ordinary, a lover of your soul who is not impressed by your performance but moved by your honesty. You are not just chosen for function, you are chosen for communion. If being chosen makes you chase assignments more than God Himself, the shadow has already started to win. Then there is the shadow of spiritual bypassing, the habit of using spiritual language to avoid facing emotional and mental pain. Instead of seeking help, therapy, or honest conversation, you might say, I'm fine, God is in control, while your nervous system is screaming, your body is shaking, your thoughts are spiraling. You may feel afraid that admitting your struggles will make you less spiritual or less chosen, so you bury them under verses and declarations. But chosen does not mean invincible. Even prophets got depressed, kings got overwhelmed, apostles felt crushed. There is no shame in saying, I need help, I need healing, I need rest. If you believe that being chosen means you must always be strong, you will despise your own humanity and judge yourself for needing what God Himself designed you to need: support, community, care. Another shadow is comparison, comparing your calling to others, ranking yourself among other chosen ones. You might secretly feel superior to some and inferior to others, constantly measuring your worth by how many miracles you see, how many followers you have, how many people listen when you speak. In this place, ministry becomes competition, not service. You either chase numbers or despise those who have them. You forget that heaven's measure is not viral impact, but faithful obedience, not how far your voice travels, but how deeply your love sinks. Comparison can also paralyze you. Instead of stepping into your unique lane, you try to imitate someone else's expression of chosenness and then feel like a failure when it does not fit. The shadow side whispers, if I am really chosen, I should look like them, instead of, if I am chosen, I should look like the truest version of who God designed me to be. The shadow also twists how you perceive suffering. Because you've learned that trials refine you, you might begin to glorify pain to the point where you reject comfort as if it is compromise. You may feel suspicious of blessings, favor, open doors, thinking, something must be wrong. It shouldn't be this easy. But the same God who meets you in the valley also leads you beside still waters. The danger is that you begin to cling to fires God never asked you to stand in. Because you think burning is the only proof that you are pure. Sometimes the most radical act of faith for a chosen one is to let yourself be loved without needing to earn it through endless suffering. Pride can even hide inside your brokenness. No one hurts like I do. Therefore, no one can understand me. Therefore, I will never fully receive from anyone. Therefore, I remain alone. It feels like protection, but it is prison. And perhaps one of the heaviest shadows of being chosen is this: the temptation to believe that your insight, your gifting, your discernment places you beyond correction, beyond questioning. You might gather people around you who only affirm and never challenge, who are enamored with your anointing but uninterested in your character. It feels good, no friction, no resistance, but slowly you drift into a dangerous place where you believe that anyone who asks hard questions is against your calling. In reality, some of the holiest gifts God sends are those who dare to tell you, You're drifting, you're hardening, you're losing the tenderness you once had. If the idea of being corrected makes you angry, if feedback feels like an attack, that is not the mark of a secure chosen one, but of a wounded ego hiding under spiritual clothing. So what does redemption look like for this shadow? It begins when you let the same light that reveals your calling also reveal your motives. When you dare to ask, why do I really want to be seen? Why do I really want influence? Why do I really want to be called, chosen? It begins when you choose humility over image, when you let yourself be human in the presence of God and others, when you stop performing holiness and start living honestly. It looks like repentance, not shame-filled groveling, but a turning of the heart from self-exaltation to surrender. It looks like learning to say, I don't know, I was wrong. I need help without feeling like your chosenness is crumbling. It looks like remembering that being chosen does not mean you were picked instead of others, as if God loves you more. It means you were entrusted with a specific assignment that is part of a much larger story, and many others are just as chosen in their lane as you are in yours. The true chosen one is not the loudest, the most mystical, the most followed, or the most visibly powerful. The true chosen one is the one who can carry fire without burning others, carry authority without crushing, carry revelation without boasting, carry pain without weaponizing it, carry visibility without forgetting the audience of one. You chosen one are invited to look at this shadow, not to condemn yourself, but to recognize where the enemy has tried to twist your identity into idolatry. Heaven's desire is not just that you know you are chosen, but that you become the kind of person who can be trusted with that knowledge. So if as you listen you feel conviction, do not run from it. Let it soften you. Let it lower you into a deeper humility. Let it remind you that before you were ever called, you were loved. Before you were ever anointed, you were known. Before you were ever chosen, you were simply a heart that God delighted in. And maybe that is the cure to the shadow side, remembering that being chosen is not about standing above others, but kneeling lower, serving deeper, loving wider, and reflecting the one who chose you not in arrogance, but in awe. You chosen one. As we come to the end of this message, I want you to carry one thing deep in your spirit. Being chosen is not about standing above others. It is about standing before God with a clean, humble, and honest heart. The light on your life is real, the calling on your life is real, but so is the shadow that tries to twist it. When you choose humility over ego, love over superiority, and surrender over self-exaltation, you become dangerous in the best way to darkness. If this word has spoken to you, if it has exposed, healed, or clarified something in you, I invite you to respond. Like this video so the message can reach more chosen ones. Share it with someone who needs this kind of holy correction and comfort. Comment below what part pierced you the most, or what God is showing you about your own shadow side. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss what heaven wants to release next. To those who support through super thanks, thank you from the bottom of my heart. And even if you never give a cent, your presence, your time, and your hunger already mean more than you know. I bless you. May your steps be ordered, your heart be guarded, your discernment be sharp, and your spirit rest in the love of the one who chose you before the foundation of the world.